say in long-term, patients that have never had Alimab, we may use them at some point to help us kind of identify things, but the longer you get out, the less risk there is for acute rejection. So I would say the utility is probably less in your case. Right now what we're trying to do is really get them approved for payment by Medicare and all the primary insurers, and they're still not approved. Although Alimab's been very generous in not, harassing patients for payment. They've really tried to kind of go through the right channels to get it approved. But it is according to the guidelines for caring for heart transplant patients, it is an approved test for, detecting rejection. So I'd say more of the recent patients have really benefited in terms of reducing number of biopsies.
What is the long time out for you to worry about?
Well, there's a range.
We look at different patient groups. Like we would look at young women. We look at young Caucasian women. We look at young African American women. We look at, middle-aged men. We look at middle-aged, we kind of look at all age groups. It's really an immune system game. The older you are, the less effective your immune system is. So that's why a lot of times older transplant recipients, nothing personal, Jeanette. No, I'm kidding. She's a young woman inside that body. But really, the older...
You can talk about Glenn. Since
yeah, okay.
Probably the oldest one.
Glenn, Harvey, Danny. No, but honestly, the older you are, the more accepting your body tends to be of that heart, because your immune system with every decade gets less effective in fighting off, foreign bodies in terms of infection, in terms of malignancies. Your immune system is constantly fighting those two things. So that also goes along with heart transplant. Older people tend to do better. Men tend to do better than women. Yes.
So it's more risky with young people?
It absolutely is.
Wow.
But we want to give them every chance to try to, make it. But immune systems in young people are very, very tricky.
Wow.
And they fight harder to reject the heart. The incidences of rejection in young people, particularly young women, tend to be higher than in older people, honestly. If you look across the, kind of the national statistics where there's a lot of people in those registries. So yes, and it also has to do with social circumstances. I've got some young 20-something-year-olds that think they're really invincible, and so they don't always follow up as well, or they've got social circumstances where they're kind of sowing their wild oats and they don't get their lab test, or they can't make it in, or they can't, so there's all those kind of issues. And older people tend to have very stable support systems. They kind of settle down, they're in a routine, they kind of tend to get their testing. It doesn't seem to be as much of an imposition. They have wives and husbands that, are good, strong support systems. So that also plays into it. But immune systems are still the challenge. And we have patients that come from the pediatric program that can be very big challenges. Once they reach their 20s, it's a tough thing. Val! No, she's been an awesome patient, I have to say. I give her grief, but she has been. You have been. She was transplanted as a kiddo, so anyway, it is a challenge. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Kimberly Miller. I'm the mother of Chenise Elkins, and I'm glad to be here this evening. I had a lot of questions, and I lost my daughter on December 14th after her heart transplant. I just have so many questions. I'm glad to be here this evening. The statement you just made that for a younger person, you would think young at the age of 23, just living her life, starting her life out, no drugs or alcohol or anything that would, and a good support system. And you would think for a 23-year-old and a 53-year-old that she'll have a better chance. But I do have one question. How many heart transplants was done last year in 2014? The 13th, I'm sorry, 13,
In 2013,
2013.
there was 40.
40, and 2 died.
The two that did not survive were actually younger individuals that have a lot of surgical, challenges. I will say for you, and I know that Dr. Silvestri is more than happy to sit down with you at some point if you need. I would encourage you to get a family meeting. I know that Dr. Ewell and Dr. Silvestri would be happy to sit down and kind of, because I think it is hard to understand that. I totally sympathize with you as far as, being up for something that you think is going to go well. Yeah, and it's a tough situation. It's tough for us too because we're, it's a roller coaster. You're hoping that this is going to be the beginning of something awesome and that will give long-term, life and independence and, that she can be a mother. And again, from the bottom of my heart, we all felt your pain and, the LVAD coordinators had nothing but awesome things to say about Chetney. It was, she was an awesome gal. So,
Yeah, they was,
I would encourage you to try to, at some point when the pain gets a little less, try to sit down with him and go through what exactly happened and how things happened that way. Because it is a hard thing. It's a very hard thing. Anytime.
yeah.
I've had patients that end up needing a heart transplant from circumstances that they don't understand, something that goes wrong in some other procedure. And, it's a process, and it's a hard process to work through. And, my hat's off to you guys for just being here tonight, honestly. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask, just for clarification, does the 40 include the two that were lost? Or no?
Yes.
Yes.
It
So there were
does.
actually 42.
Yes.
No,
There were actually 38.
Yeah, 38.
That survived.
Right.
Okay, that's what I knew. Gotcha, okay.
Okay, I got it now too.
Yeah, because I was thinking that the 40 was inclusive of,
No.
So 40 transplants performed.
okay,
That's a better way to.
okay, thank you.
And I will say this too, we interface with our children's colleagues a lot because when, patients become 18 to 21 years old, they transition to our program and, it's heart-wrenching to talk to those girls because getting a child through childhood with a heart transplant is incredibly challenging. You have a lot of, growing up and issues with the immune system and going through different phases and trying to keep an eye on the drug levels. It's a tough thing. So, it just is, it speaks to the challenges of trying to do, young kids and young adults. It's a tough process. Yes, Tim.
The other day, I guess it was Saturday, we went down and we went into the gift shop and just talking with the young man behind the counter. His name's Michael. And he said he had a valve job at Children's Hospital about 25 years ago. And we'll end up having a heart transplant. But he said if it comes about, he's doing really well. He
Yeah.
works in there. And he said that he would probably go back to Children's to get his heart. Is that right?
Well, there are some restrictions.
No, they kick you out.
I know, they do kick you out.
You leave.
And it has to do with coverage, insurance coverage. That we all are, yes. And they have. I will say there's a couple of patients they've made exceptions of that are in their early 20s that are clearly more a pediatric issue. Tom, had the pediatric cardiac surgeon come over and do his surgery because I'm telling you, you wouldn't want our guys operating on a congenital heart. But in a, pretty much, standard where everything's where it's supposed to be, our guys are great. But in a congenital where nothing's where it's supposed to be because of, just different plumbing that was, there from birth, it's a challenge. Yes, Gene?
Tim, we do still collaborate, so when patients who have that congenital work.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and I was happy for the guy.
For transplant, those pediatric surgeons will come to our ORs to this kind of work with the physicians, so it's a very collaborative
Yeah.
effort.
Yes.
You're just not gonna get the great flavored
You don't get bubble gum flavored gas inhaled, yeah.
They'll come over to Barnes Jewish and you'll wake up too. You'll wake up to Sydney.
That's all I'll say.
Oh, any other comments
But
or?
that is something else that we have to overcome as well as getting all of our new adult transplants. We are receiving all the children's transplants who are
Yeah.
now too old to stay in the children's.
Yeah, how do you
home.
get records from 25 years ago from the
Yeah.
chick?
Yeah, and you know what? The parents a lot of times are not real happy that they're having to switch from someone who's taken care of their baby since birth to us, who is completely foreign. So you can imagine that it's a complicated transition.
It's a tough, it's a challenge.
Cheryl.
I got my own 3 teenagers at home. I don't need more. Yeah. No, they're awesome kids. I mean, the families and kids that come to us from Children's, I have to say, are some of the most awesome people. I mean, it's amazing.
I do have to say one thing. I started out at St. Louis University, and since they shut down their program, I was hesitant. But you guys welcomed me with open arms. And I felt very comfortable as soon as I talked to you. And one of the funniest people is Dr. Joseph.
Yeah.
She's a legend. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. That's awesome, Ken. Thanks. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.